houses. We have a third one coming up on April the 2nd in Port Stanley in the evening. So we'll use this as an opportunity to let people know. We'll be out at the Port Stanley Arena from, I believe, 6 to 8 that evening. We do have a project webpage as well. There's lots of opportunity to provide input into the process. For those that might be affiliated or associated with a service club, minor sport organization, other community organization, we will be having more targeted workshops with those groups. That's coming up. We want to get out and see your parks and waiting for the weather to turn a little bit for that. Been a bit slower this year, but there will be plenty of opportunities for those groups to get involved in the process as well. So just wanted to highlight that. So in terms of what we've heard so far, I have a few slides in your package. I think this is exciting to see. I'm on slide 7. I think we're getting it up on screen. Really good, really pleased with the level of public engagement on the community survey. I appreciate staff's help in spreading word because that's often part of the challenge is, letting people know that there's an opportunity to provide input. We had 350 surveys that were completed for that study from across the municipality, very representative of your community. So I do have a few slides in that deck I'll come to in a moment to let you know a little bit about what we're hearing. There's still, again, though, opportunities to get involved, whether it's the open house, there'll be additional consultation near the end of the process, and the other items that I've mentioned so far. So on the next slide, we have, I think, three, 4 slides on just some early returns from our survey. We're still, again, this just closed a week ago, so we're still unpacking a lot of it. We asked people what they like to do. So that's what's on this slide is really the top 10 or so responses to how your households are participating in community services, recreation, leisure, parks, trails. And what you'll see really the top 8 here from and just enjoying the outdoor realm, walking on trails, beach activities, special events. Most of these are unstructured, unscheduled, all age, low cost activities. It's a big part of what folks enjoy about a community such as this is the ability to go out on their own time and participate in their own way, shape, or form. You'll see a couple sports near the bottom of that list: hockey or ice skating, ice sports, pickleball. Is definitely something, years ago, I think we'd see this around 10%. Now we're kind of up to about 35% of households in your community. And there was a good representation from older adults. Not that pickleball is just for older adults because it's becoming a bit more pervasive. But we're definitely seeing that number climbing over the last few years. We also recognize that your residents don't just stop at your borders and vice versa. There's a real regionality to how people participate, whether it's St. Thomas or beyond. And certainly, your beaches and others do attract a great deal of tourists. So we're mindful that Central Elgin doesn't need to do everything. You need to exist within the system that is around you as well, and trying to remove barriers as best as possible where those do exist. So on the next slide, we asked people if they're able to participate as often as they would like. And about 2 out of 5 said, no, like there's something that's keeping me from doing this as often as I would like. 38%. Not great, not terrible. It's sort of, there's always going to be some barriers, some challenges for some folks. And sometimes it's lack of time, just, not knowing about the opportunities. We see that. But for the most part, it was like the biggest challenge was a perceived lack of desired parks and facilities and programs. And maybe I'll just pause on that one because it'll come up as we go what some of those desired parks, facilities, or programs are. On the next slide, you'll see what those priorities could be from your general public. If we've got $1 to invest, where does that go? You'll see this tends to mirror what people like to do. So we saw these unstructured, unscheduled, informal, low-cost type of activities. We want to enjoy our parks. We want to get out. We want to picnic. We want to walk. We want to be able to spend time with family. out in the public realm. So supporting that through comfort features, through just the availability of open space, trails, playgrounds. These are core and essential aspects of your park system to begin with. So it's not suggesting that you're not doing it already, but it is suggesting that these are critical to continuing to maintain the quality of life that your residents are looking for. There were a number of other, we started getting into some more indoor recreation pieces and things that you may not have in your community. Not unusual for the size of your community, but not to have a gymnasium, walking tracks, fitness centers. I think we're part of that. Outdoor ice skating rinks, splash pads. What you don't see on this list, and this was part of one of the barriers that was expressed to us, is the lack of indoor or year-round swimming opportunities. It was purposely not put on this particular list for a matter of just not wanting to raise undue expectations around the development of an indoor pool. We know that's a need in the region. Just recently been working with the city of St. Thomas to try to advance that initiative in that municipality. I'll leave that for their council to decide how that fits into their capital plans. But we know that's also a consistent message that we've heard across the region about the need for an indoor pool. On the next slide, just wanted to provide a bit of additional input and ideas, what we heard around trails in particular, because that is a big part of, and how you can work with your communities to make sure that they're engaged, that they're connected with their neighbors. It's part of the more of a rural and semi-rural way of life, is to be able to have those outdoor opportunities. So we know trails are very important. The work that was done in 2017 through the Trails Master Plan, we'll be re-looking at that. For the most part, it was a very solid plan, but how do we sort of get that moving along a little bit faster? We're hearing from your community that they like the trail routes and some of the priorities in there, but making sure that it's recalibrated to today and continues to move forward, because we heard about those, that it is a priority. It's not just the trail, it's how you support the trail through wayfinding, through signage, through seating, and other improvements. So that's really where we've a little bit about where we've been and where we are in the project right now. Happy to take any questions on what I presented or about the process, but really wanted to use the balance of our time today. We've put up 6 questions on here, more just as conversation starters. I don't need to go through these one at a time, but would love to hear from any and all members of council. Let us know a bit more about your community, like what are some of those issues and trends? Because we find parks, recreation trails can be a great connector for dealing with some of those issues or achieving some of your corporate objectives. What is your vision? What are some of the priorities that you're seeing in your time on council, hearing from your constituents on, in terms of how to move the needle, and even if we're doing something well right now, that's important for us to hear as well, because we want to make sure that continues to get supported. So it's not all about the negative or what could be done better, although that's certainly something we'd like to shine a light on if that is the case here. So dealing with some of those barriers to participation, any other ideas that you have or best advice that you can offer our consulting team as we go through this process. So with that, I'm happy to turn it back to Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Langlois. Deputy Mayor has a question.
It's for you, Mayor. Have you ever looked at partnering with the conservation authorities? Because they have lots of trails and land, and I'm just curious if that is an opportunity that's been explored.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Partnership, just in general, partnerships are something that I think every municipality needs to consider. It takes a village. Many of conservation authorities have a land base or programs that are well loved by the community. We have yet to reach out to those groups for this process. They are on our list to do so, to see what those program opportunities could be. I know the municipality has a bit of an agreement for a dog park up at the Dan Patterson Conservation area, I believe. And I think more can always be done, even if it's from a simple awareness to something more formal around operating agreements and so on. There's different approaches, and they're all quite unique to the municipality and the conservation authorities that are in place. Lots of change happening in conservation authority land, has been for a number of years. It's not just what's happening now, but they have a core mandate, and sometimes it's a bit different in what they can support and what a municipality wants to support. So I think that's something we'd like to explore further.
Councillor Bachman.
Thank you very much for the information you provided. Not to sound repetitive or redundant, but the thing I'm hearing the most, and we all have different concerns based on our needs. Belmont is a Kettle Creek running through the middle of it. The number one issue that we heard, as you outlined here, is a trail system to get people off that main street. Because the only walking we can do to get from one side of town to the other is to go down Main Street and off that. And with truck traffic and everything else, it's a major concern for a lot of people, not just parents with young kids, but seniors who like walk for recreation or whatever. So that's always been the major concern, at least during my tenure. What I'd like to see is, once again, to build upon Deputy Mayor's point, is that most of the land is owned or managed by the Conservation Authority coming through the middle of Belmont. Both sides of that creek would require cooperation. And I understand that we're still at the walking stage. We haven't got to the actual implementation or activity stage, but there's also opportunities with service clubs who I know in our town especially would be more than happy to help out. I'm not volunteering them, but if they're listening, you're on the list. So as far as moving forward in our town, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Port Stanley, the major concern is to get people from one side of town to the other without going down Main Street. And Kettle Creek walking trail, multi-purpose walking trail would be ideal, as it was outlined at the meeting that you guys held. So thank you very much for the input, and I'd like to see the numbers that supported that.
Speaking of numbers, when you go to a person in the public and ask them what their thoughts are, do you do any benchmarking with respect to what Central Elgin currently spends? So if we say to them, we're right now spending X per dollar on community services, and neighboring municipality spends Y. Obviously trails are very important, and all the things that we have. As for a pool, you said it takes a village. It takes a village at about $16 million, from what I understand, for my good friend, Councillor Lori Baldwin-Sands, to build her pool in St. Thomas, because she wants an Olympic one. And I do think she should, because Central Elgin residents will be glad to use it. Now, I say that jokingly because the bigger point is, how much budget do we have to spend? So when we go to people and say, we're currently spending X, right? And here's what you get for X. Here's the cost of a trail versus the cost of pickleball. Would that not affect what their responses would be? So two parts. One, costing out sort of what it would be for a constituent. And second of all, benchmarking, so that when we go and ask the question, hey, we have 5 pickleball. I don't know how many we have. Does anyone know? Michelle, you play? And then one in the East End by your sister, Norm? There's 2, Belmont. Okay, so so my point is if I go and say, hey, how are we doing on pickleball? And we say to them, we've got 4, and the constituency next door has 1. So I'd like them to show, because I think your work can also show where we're leading. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I appreciate that perspective, Mayor. What I'm showing you here today is just one piece of the puzzle. And we wanted to report back on some early returns from our engagement. That engagement is still ongoing. The other part of phase 1, I said, is research and consultation. So we're working quickly to prepare a report that would have just that. It has that benchmarking. It has more, I'll say more facts and figures, reality checks. It's hard to go out to the public with a complete costing of the recommendations because they haven't been developed yet, but we're very mindful of the barriers that are present for any council for that matter in terms of getting things done from a monetary and financial perspective. There's a lot of pressures on communities these days. And you know, what I'm I guess what I enjoy out of this and what's great to see is a lot of those items, we're not always the highest cost items near the top of the list. It's your parks and comfort infrastructure. Trails can be difficult. They're not always the most costly. If you get into bridging and certain things, that's where your costs tend to spiral a bit more. So, you know, I think there's a sense. Community seems pretty realistic, but we want to be able to maximize that impact. So that will be material that will come, and it will be tied back to as much evidence as we can provide to support that for council.
Okay. And just one question to Councillor Connors. I shouldn't have overlooked you. Does Lyndhurst have an pickleball?
No, we have 0. And I was going to make mention of that, and I have a question as well.
Okay, over to you.
So again, in further to both the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Blockman's points, I can certainly see that, you know, bringing in trails and whatnot in new subdivisions is, I would say, easier than implementing it in places like Belmont or Lyndhurst, where it's established and now we have to partner with maybe Kettle Creek or someone else to do this. But when we modified the sidewalks in Lyndhurst, down Wellington and down McBain, I mean, it's amazing how many walkers there really are in those subdivisions. And I'm sure that the constituents in that area would love to have some additional areas where they could walk. So I would suggest and recommend that we do pursue this partnership with the conservation authorities.
Thanks. Just since apparently pickleball is the topic of the moment, I think I'd like to mention that one of the most common pieces of feedback I've had in Sparta for quite a while now is that the ball diamond hasn't been used in a million years now that there's so much ball in St. Thomas, and there are a lot of people that would love to see pickleball out that way. So if you are looking for more space for it, we have space.
Deputy.
Through you, Mayor, just to throw Union on the map, I think we have tennis, which is probably very similar to pickleball. I'll throw that out there. Maybe Facebook will pick that up and show me the difference.
Okay. Questions for our proponent? Councillor Graham, please.
Thank you for the information. So I think it's an ideal time right now to talk about the future, especially with the psych hospital, right? Ideally, I think probably anyone who is outdoor minded would love to see an entire trail system through that. You know, maybe that wouldn't necessarily cost us anything, but more so the developers that are doing that. I know there's a small portion that was in the design, but we have a perfect opportunity right now in developing that whole area that we could put quite an aggressive trail system through there. So that would be my suggestion.
Would you like to reply to Councillor Graham? And then I have the Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, that's been certainly an item that's been ongoing, and I know has been on your agenda as we're trying to monitor that. So we've been in some conversation with the consultant around that. I think it would be a question of how that fits with the OPA that's advancing on a more quick time format than we're on. I think that's in front of council shortly. At the same time, there's a lot of things that you can do from translating policy into action, and we definitely want to see connections to other trail systems. We always hear from residents about like looped and comprehensive trail systems. So it's not just about getting from point A to point B, but coming back a different way. Trails are used more for recreation, but they do have other uses as well. So from a utilitarian perspective, connecting to the right destinations in the right context is important. And, just there's a time and place for trails along roads, but there's also a time and place for trails within natural settings. And I think it was the point that was made earlier. Yes, it's definitely easier to put them in at the start. In many ways, there's almost no going back after the fact. So I think it's a valid point, certainly, to consider how best to manage that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mayor, I believe from Mary Lou Tanner's report that new community was going to be walkable within 15 minutes of parks. So I know a sidewalk is not a trail, but like having, there is quite a bit that's gone into the design of that with being a 15-minute walkable within the park. So I just thought that was worth mentioning, that there was some effort put into that, quite a bit of effort probably.
Thank you. Councillor Graham, please.
And one of the major complaints that I get from young families in Port is that we don't have enough for kids to do down there. There's like a small playground equipment at the beach. Other than the ballpark, there's not really any parks that have anything to do. I mean, there's one up on East Road, but it's got the workout equipment, which no one ever seems to use. So that would be something that I would think that people would enjoy seeing, some type of long-term plan for that. And wondering about something like I'm not thinking a big, huge idea on this, but something like a water park. So St. Mary's director of parks now lives in Port Stanley. And I happened to be playing pickleball with him one night, and he was talking about, and I'm sure Mr. Mayers can speak to this a little bit more since they were colleagues. There's a big water park in the quarry in St. Mary's, and something like that I think would be ideal for Port Stanley.
Sir.
Really, the purpose of today is to take those ideas and when we go out to Port Stanley on April 2nd, that'll give us a bit of context. We'll be getting out into the parks. We'll be doing our assessments as well as to what's available, what's not available, the condition of what's there. There's a lot of been a lot of push for improvements around the beach and waterfront area, but we also need to be mindful of serving the entire population. So I'm hearing more for older children. Something that might even be, would it be more of a tourism draw, or just from a matter of serving your local residents? Curious if the water park idea, because I know I've been to the one in St. Mary's, very accessible to local residents, but it's also pulling in people from outside.
Councillor.
And just as a point to that, when I was speaking to the previous parks fellow from there, it's not funded through any tax base. So it's actually a generator of money for the municipality or for St. Mary's. I don't know if it's city, town, because it's an independent that pays the municipality or pays the town to use that space. So to me, that's an ideal situation.
Did you wish to comment, sir? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other councillors have any questions for Mr. Langwell? Anything from your side, sir?
Just appreciate council's time today. We will be back in front of this council at some point with a draft report. So it's nice, we'd like to grab your thoughts today. We have an opportunity to test that and make sure it gets looked at and embedded through the process. So if anything does certainly strike you beyond today, please do feel free to reach out to us. You do that directly or through our project manager, Mr. Mayers here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing back, and we'll, until next time, thank you. Moving forward, motions and notice of motion. Councillor Graham.
So this follows well on the tails of what we've just been talking about, but it's a notice of motion to have staff explore some sponsorship opportunities throughout the municipality for arenas, facilities. I mean, it goes, they did roads, they did bridges in different municipalities. And the mayor and I had talked about this previously, going to some of the Roma and AMO and then they had like a lunch and learn about sponsorship as well, and how much other municipalities are saving or generating based on getting large corporations or banks to sponsor them. So feel free if you have any questions.
Do you have a seconder, Councillor? Oh, Councillor Griffin.
Mayor Sullivan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Griffin. Whereas municipalities across Ontario continue to face increasing financial pressures associated with the maintenance, operation, and expansion of public infrastructure and services. And whereas alternative revenue sources, including sponsorship and naming rights agreements with local businesses and corporations, have been successfully utilized by other municipalities to offset costs. And whereas sponsorship opportunities may include, but are not limited to, municipal facilities, bridges, roads, transit assets, trails, and public amenities. And whereas such partnerships can provide mutual benefit by supporting municipal budgets while offering local businesses increased visibility and community engagement opportunities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to investigate and report back on potential sponsorship and naming rights opportunities within the municipality, including but not limited to facility sponsorships and naming rights, bridge, road, and infrastructure sponsorship programs, park, trail, and recreational asset sponsorships, event and program sponsorship opportunities, and further that staff's report include a review of best practices from other Ontario and Canadian municipalities, potential revenue projections and cost-saving implications, legal, procurement, and policy considerations, including any restrictions or risks, guidelines to ensure transparency, fairness, and alignment with community values, and criteria for evaluating and approving sponsorship agreements, and further that staff identify any required policy framework or bylaw amendments necessary to implement a municipal sponsorship program, and further that staff report back to council with recommendations for consideration.
Questions or comments? Did staff want to comment? I don't know.
Is there a time frame for this? That just right now, our capacity is a little bit limited. So if there be a time frame, that would probably help us out, knowing when we need to get at it.
Councillor.
I would say whatever timeframe staff finds suitable.
So if I may, I agree wholeheartedly with the concept. You and I think the deputy mayor was there in Ottawa, spoke with the mayor of, was it Chatham? And I brought up at your town hall, Dave, that, or Councillor Bachman, that he said, if you're going to do sponsorship, you have to make sure that the money, if it's, let's say, the Enbridge Arena, that the constituents know that all the money from Enbridge is going directly to the arena. And they can see, whether it's more ice time, whether it's a renovation of the facility. If you do it and it goes into general, no dice. People don't like it. They don't think it's just essentially used for a reserve fund. That was what I took over for it. I have no concerns other than the timing with respect to it gets a little belabored into best practices, and I don't know how staff would do that. I think overall the concept of looking for it is important, but I'm going to defer to on timing and that kind of stuff and ask for what the thoughts are. Okay.
If we could have some time to think about this, and we can let you know what our time frame would be for getting something back to council, but just knowing it's not likely to happen in the near future. Okay.
Questions on proceeding? Are you asking for a deferral or a time? What should we do?
If a time frame could be put in the notice of motion, that would give us some direction from council to proceed then. Just simply adding at the end that, and the report be presented to council by a certain date.
Well, do you want to consult with staff and see what the best time frame would be, and we could pass it based on acknowledgement of the time frame from staff at a later date?
That would be.
That's good. You're okay with that? Thanks, Councillor Graham. So we've got Councillor Bachman.
Just throwing a thought out there, what could we even put something like before council's term is up? And just leave it open?
Any other councillors have any other questions? The clerk has a question. That's important. Go ahead.
Thanks so much, Mayor Sloan. Through to council, just to clarify the procedural process here, we have an amendment to the paragraph, the final clause there, being that staff report back to council before the end of the 2022 to 2026 term. And just to be clear, is Councillor Bachman willing to move that amendment?
Councillor Bachman, yes, he is. Clerk Leach, please.
And apologies again, do we have a seconder for that amendment?
Deputy Councillor Griffin. If I could call a vote on the amendment, correct? All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Amendment carries.
And then the main motion?
Main motion, all those in favor? Oh, Councillor Watson has a favor. Question and a favor.
Sorry, last minute there, Mayor, through you. So who's going to be doing this planning? Is it going to be in the Public Works Department, or is it going to be in the Planning and Engineering? I saw Scott nod his head that he could do it, but will it be the Engineering Department, and can they do it? Because we're spreading ourselves thin here. I want to be careful with this one. Thanks.
Mr. Mayers.
Through the mayor, it would be a run through Public Works Community Services Department, so it would be under my leadership for this. Certainly consultation with the other departments like planning and engineering, but with some of the big files we've got active at the moment, certainly allowing us some time to work through this. I think the time frame works. That was suggested by Councillor Bachman works for us. It allows us some time. There's a fair amount of work that goes into something like this. I've gone through something similar on a much smaller scale, and it was a significant amount of work to kind of work through. I think it's a great idea. I think there's some great revenue opportunities there that we can really harness. It's definitely something worth taking a look at, but we just need a little bit of time as staff. But it would be under my leadership.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 2, Councillor Graham.
So this week I went down to the fire hall, and the chief was nice enough to rearrange his day to allow for a tour. And in having conversations with the chief, he had advised that someone had stopped in at the fire hall that needed ambulance service, and it took them 22 minutes to get an ambulance there. So the chief and I had talked about, wouldn't it be a good idea? Obviously, it was more so the chief's idea. Wouldn't it be a great idea to have ambulance services closer during May, the summer season, from May long weekend to September long weekend, because of the difficulties that we've had sometimes in port. So we discussed whether it'd be the chief bringing the motion or myself. We decided that it would be myself to bring the motion, but I'm sure the chief is open to any questions that anyone has.
First, I think we have to start with the seconder. Do you have a seconder? Oh, okay. Councillor Griffin, got your seconder. So, Councillor, sorry, you had your hand up. I didn't know if that was to second or to speak. Please go ahead.
Thanks, through you. I'll second it in order to speak. I had a couple of questions when I read this. I'm interested to know that the chief was involved in the conversation. I think that's great. But I was a little confused about it because I think a conversation a lot like this came up when we talked about our master fire plan, and there was concern about the nature of putting EMS and fire into the same space, and people who are stationed in sort of a continuous way versus people who come in on volunteer and who serve different roles. And I think that at some point it was literally described to us as being an oil and water relationship in some buildings. So it struck me as unusual. What would that look like for us? And especially in the context of our fire plan, having this tentative idea of eventually getting rid of Station 2, and that ultimately meaning that we may have more staff and more vehicles at Station 1 in the long term.
Mr. McLeod, do you want to start with the staff response? Thank you.
Sure. So I can lead that. In response to the notice of motion, I did speak with Elgin County CAO, and there will be an ambulance master plan carried out in 2027. So I'm wondering if that may be the time where it might be more effective for Central Elgin to push the envelope on this. The other thing that we need to look at that I've mentioned to the chief is that our medical call volume is extremely high. We're by far the highest in the county. Our tiered response is the highest level of service. So looking at these two in conjunction, in my mind, is probably a more pragmatic approach to take with how we can best serve the residents in Port Stanley. The mixing of the volunteers and the volunteer firefighters and EMS is not so much a concern of mine, but right now, in talking with the chief, I wanted to make sure there was space. There are space constraints at that station. We don't have a space where they would be able to have a meeting room or a lounge area. So there are some areas that we may have to work on, but the overall approach of what the county is going to do with ambulance service, in my mind, is probably from an overall perspective on Central Elgin, is Belmont getting good service? Is it just Port Stanley? Like, where are we short? I know there's only 4 wagons in the county on any given night, so someone's not getting the best service. And is it Central Elgin? Is it West Elgin? Is it BAM? We just don't know that without looking at what the county is going to do with their master plan.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
I can understand those things for sure. I think that, you know, something like this would be a good pilot project leading up to that 2017 master plan. I think that's actually ideal timing for it. But maybe the chief could kind of give a few comments about your opinion, chief.
Yeah, so I do think that there is a gap in Port Stanley. We have a delay in ambulance service. Quite often we're looking at a 30-minute time constraint. I do think that there needs to be some more looking into this. I know I've talked to the chief in Bayham about the lounge requirements, the spacing that they need to when they moved ambulance into their fire hall. And then, factoring in, I wasn't aware of the EMS master study. So, factoring in some of that and with the master fire plan concerns and some of that. But I do think, looking at what is Elgin County doing in terms of ambulance response, especially in Port Stanley during the peak season, but also in some of our other areas within the municipality.
Councillor Connors, and then Councillor Graham.
Through you, Mayor. I think that, talking about having an ambulance bay somewhere in Central Elgin is a good idea. However, I think that we need to look at the geographics of the entire area and how are we best going to serve Central Elgin. I don't think it's how we best serve Port Stanley or how we best serve Belmont or any individual community. I believe it's how we best serve the entire community. And I can certainly get behind that.
Thank you, Councillor Connors. Councillor Griffin.
Thank you. Through you, I very much agree with Councillor Connors' sentiment. And I think that although it can be possible to start by doing a test project and seeing if it improves the situation, if it's a test of a new solution and it's going to cost time and money and possible renovations and things to make it possible to start it, and there's going to be a potential new plan coming from the county that could address more than just Port Stanley's needs in only a year, I think I would rather see that whole plan come out than go and make a bunch of changes that we may have to then undo or redo in order to better serve the total community.
Just before Councillor Graham, any other questions or comments? Councillor Graham.
So, and just to be clear, whether we go either way, this is just a request for a report. from the chief. So information, we're not deciding on it by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails. Thank you. I'm going to need a mover and a seconder to move into closed session. Councillor Bachman, Councillor Connors, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion for that is moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Connors. The council proceed into closed session at 4:49 PM in order to address a matter pertaining to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees, regarding a CAO update.
All those in favor? Opposed? And we're